Have you ever reached a moment in life where desperation left you with only one choice? And that choice changed everything. Clara Blackwood thought she had lost it all when she left Philadelphia with nothing but hope and a worn-out satchel, hungry, penniless, and alone on the edge of the Arizona frontier. She knocked on a rancher's door asking for work, but instead of offering her a simple job, James Blackwood, a cowboy with haunted eyes and a past scarred by fire and betrayal, gave her an impossible bargain. "I'll hire you if you marry me before sunset." What would you have done, standing there with the dust at your heels, no family to turn to, and a stranger's proposal hanging in the air? Would you walk away and face the unknown alone, or take his hand and gamble your future on a man you barely knew? This isn't just a story about survival. It's about two broken souls daring to believe that love might rise from the ashes of hardship. Stay with us as we journey into the untamed West where choices carve destinies. And before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you'll never miss the stories that remind us how love can find us in the most unexpected places. The relentless Arizona sun burned low on the horizon as Clara Whitfield tightened her grip on the worn leather satchel hanging from her shoulder. Dust clung to her dress, her throat parched not only from the heat, but from the weight of her circumstances. Ahead loomed the weathered gates of Iron Creek Ranch, the very place she had never imagined she would come to, seeking work and perhaps mercy from a man she had never laid eyes on. It was the year 1885, and the western frontier remained a perilous place for a woman traveling alone. Clara had learned that lesson more than once during her 3 long weeks on the trail from Boston. But her father's death had left her destitute, with debts and disgrace as her only inheritance. She pressed her palm to the heavy gate, shoved it open, and walked up the dusty path toward the main house. The 2-story structure stood solid and unyielding, a broad porch lined with rocking chairs facing the fading sun. To Clara, it looked less like a home and more like her last hope. Her steps faltered when a tall man appeared on the porch, his face shaded beneath the brim of a wide hat. "This is private property, ma'am." His voice rang deep and steady. Clara straightened her back, summoning the composure drilled into her in another life. "I was told Iron Creek might be hiring. I've come seeking work, sir." The man descended the steps with measured calm. As the light touched his features, Clara caught her breath. He was younger than she had imagined, perhaps 30, with skin darkened by the sun and eyes the color of a clear western sky. His frame was broad, his manner self-assured. "Jameson Carter," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "I own this place." "Clara Whitfield," she replied, offering her gloved hand as her mother had once taught her. To her surprise, he took it, his palm calloused and warm. "What sort of work are you after, Miss Whitfield? We don't generally employ ladies at the ranch." "I can cook, clean, mend, keep books," she answered quickly. "I learn fast. Mr. Carter." His eyes lingered on her travel-stained dress that had once been fine, her determined chin, the spark of intelligence in her hazel eyes. After a long pause, he said, "There's only one position available, but it comes with a condition." Her heart thudded. And what would that be? His gaze flicked to the descending sun, then back to her face. "You'll marry me before it sets." Clara gasped, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon." "You heard me," he said evenly. "A wedding by sunset, or there's no place for you here." "That's outrageous," she stammered. "I don't even know you. Plenty of women marry men they hardly know out here, he replied with a shrug. I've got my reasons. Take it or leave it. Clara's fingers tightened around her satchel. She had exactly $3.17 left. A room at the hotel in town cost $1 a night. What then? Her desperation wrestled with the absurdity of his demand. Why would you ask a stranger to be your wife? She pressed. His jaw flexed. Because I have a homestead claim to prove. The government requires a wife living on the land, and tomorrow is my deadline. So yes or no. Her mind raced. A business agreement, not a true marriage. That made it slightly less unthinkable. Would this be a real marriage, she asked, heat rising in her cheeks despite her attempt at reason. On paper, yes. Beyond that, we set the terms, he replied. I'll need my own room, she said at once. Done. And wages for my work around the ranch. Reasonable. And the right to leave if circumstances change. His expression darkened. I don't make light of marriage, Miss Whitfield, but I won't hold you against your will. If it eases your mind, we'll put it in writing. Clara drew in a shaky breath. She could hardly believe the bargain she was weighing. I need time to think, she whispered. No time, Jameson countered, gesturing to the sinking sun. Judge Harper is in town today only. It's now or never. Her eyes closed briefly. What would her mother say if she could see her now, considering a marriage to a stranger for room and board, but there was no one left to guide her? At last she met his gaze with steady resolve. Very well, Mr. Carter, I accept. For the first time, surprise flickered in his eyes, then he nodded sharply. We ride to town. He gave a low whistle, and a ranch hand appeared with 2 horses, a sleek black stallion, and a gentler chestnut mare. Can you ride, Miss Whitfield? He asked as he took the stallion's reins. Yes, she lied, though her only lessons had been years ago and nothing like this, without a word. Jameson helped her mount, his strong hands firm at her waist. The touch unsettled her more than she cared to admit. They rode in silence, the weight of her choice pressing heavily. Ahead, the small town of Silverton emerged. Wooden buildings lined along a dusty street. Why me? She asked finally. Surely there were women here you could have asked? Tried, he said without turning his head. The local girls want love, not land. Widows want safety, not labor. You're desperate enough not to ask too many questions. His bluntness cut, though she knew he was right. And what happens after we're married, she asked quietly. We make it work or we don't, he said simply. But I keep my word. You'll have shelter, food, and respect under my name, at the edge of town. The narrow stairs to the judge's office came into view. Clara's pulse hammered as she realized there was no turning back. Judge Harper looked like a man forever short on time, round in the middle, spectacles sliding down his nose. He sighed when Jameson and Clara stepped into his office above the general store in Silverton. Another one. Carter, he said, rubbing at his temples. 3rd young lady this month. Clara stopped cold. She turned to Jameson, surprise and a little dread prickling the back of her neck. The others changed their minds. Jameson answered, his tone curt as he cut a glance toward the judge. This time, it goes through. Judge Harper lifted a ledger with the resignation of a man who had seen too much of the frontier's mess and not enough of its promises. Names, he said, pen poised. The ceremony was quick, stripped down to its bare bones. Clara's hands trembled when she set her name to the marriage record. the ink pooling at the tail of the final letter. Jameson's signature landed beneath hers, bold and steady as if he nailed boards with the strokes. "You may kiss your bride," Judge Harper said, already closing the book. Jameson hesitated only a breath, then leaned in and touched his lips to Clara's cheek. The brush of his beard was rough. The warmth of the moment was brief and bewildering. "Congratulations, Mrs. Carter," the judge said, handing her the certificate. "May you fare better than his previous almost brides." Outside, the sun sat like a burning coin on the rim of the world. Jameson helped Clara mount without meeting her eyes. They turned their horses toward Iron Creek Ranch, the hoofbeats drumming a rhythm Clara felt in her chest. "I believe you owe me an explanation," she said as the town fell behind them. "Previous almost brides," Jameson answered with a long exhale. "It is not what you are thinking." Two agreed to the arrangement. Both withdrew before the vows. "Why?" she asked. He rode in silence long enough that Clara wondered if he would ignore the question. "One found a better offer from a shopkeeper. The other," he paused, then finished. "The other said she would not wed a man with my reputation." "And what reputation is that?" Clara asked, wary now. "Some say I killed a man," he said flatly. "Some say I robbed a bank. Some say worse. Folks talk, especially about a man who keeps to himself." "Did you kill a man?" she asked, her voice low. His eyes slid to hers, cool and steady. "Would it change anything now? You are already my wife." A chill ran through her despite the settling heat of evening. She swallowed. "For what it is worth," he added after a beat, "I never killed anyone who was not trying to kill me first. That was during the war, a long time ago." They crested a rise. The main house and bunkhouse of Iron Creek Ranch glowed with lamplight. The place looked solid as a courthouse and twice as stubborn. "I should warn you," Jameson said as they rode into the yard. "My foreman will not take kindly to this. He thinks I'm a fool for holding on to High Meadow." "Is that where the homestead is?" she asked. "The claim?" He nodded. 160 acres of the best grass in the territory. My father tried for it 20 years back and failed. I do not mean to repeat that mistake." They swung down, the front door banged open, and a broad man with a salt and pepper beard strode toward them, boots striking boards hard enough to make them complain. "You truly went through with it?" the man demanded, looking Clara over with a frank, skeptical stare. "Married a city girl to save your claim. Watch your tone." "Elias," Jameson said, quiet but iron tight, "this is my wife, Clara Whitfield Carter. You will show her the respect her position deserves." The foreman's mouth pulled to one side, contrition pushing out the bluster. No offense meant. "Ma'am, name is Elias Boone. Welcome to Iron Creek." Clara gave a small nod. The reality of the day pressed down on her like a quilt too heavy for summer. "Get her things from town tomorrow," Jameson told Elias. "Tonight she will make do with what she has." He turned to Clara. "I will show you your room. Inside." The house surprised her. The furniture was strong and plain, but touches of gentleness softened the edges. Embroidered cushions, a glass front cabinet with china arranged with care, landscapes painted in muted oils. "My mother's things," Jameson said when her gaze lingered on a delicate porcelain figurine. "She passed 10 years ago. My father 5 years before that." "I'm sorry," Clara said. "My father died recently as well." Jameson gave a brief nod but did not ask for more. He led her up the stairs to a small bedroom with a narrow bed, a sturdy dresser, and a washstand polished by years of use. This was my sister's room before she married and moved to California. He said, "You have a sister?" Clara asked, seizing on the small, ordinary detail like a handhold on a cliff. "Two, both older. Both went east as soon as they could." His voice suggested more to the story, but he offered nothing else. "Bath is down the hall. Kitchen is downstairs. You will meet Agnes in the morning. She cooks for the hands." "I thought you needed someone who could cook," Clara said, frowning a little. "I do," he answered. "Agnes Turner's getting on in years. Arthritis troubles her. She needs help." He paused at the door. "Get some rest, Mrs. Carter. Tomorrow will be long." When he left, Clara sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the strain of the day break over her. The tears came quiet and hot, born of exhaustion and the knowledge that she had tied her life to a stranger in a land that did not forgive mistakes. Morning rose early at Iron Creek. The ranch woke her before the light did. Hooves clattered in the yard. Men's voices rolled low and practical. A rooster sounded off like a bugle. Clara dressed in one of her 2 remaining dresses and wished for something sturdier. The kitchen already hummed when she came in. An elderly woman with knotted hands pushed and folded bread dough on a wide table dusted with flour. "You must be the new Mrs. Carter," the woman said without looking up. "I am Agnes." About time that boy found himself a wife, though I admit I did not expect he would choose a lady from back east. "It is not. We are not." Clara faltered, then let the sentence go. "It is complicated. It always is, child," Agnes said, lifting her face. Her faded blue eyes were keen despite the years. "You know how to make biscuits." "Yes," Clara said. "Good. Start on those. Men will be in for breakfast in an hour. Thrown straight into work." Clara found a rhythm beside Agnes. The older woman was brisk but kind, showing where everything lived, explaining the day's cadence. "We feed the hands at sunrise and again at sunset," Agnes said. "Mr. Carter takes coffee in his study at 6. He eats breakfast when the morning chores let him. Eggs over easy, bacon crisp, coffee strong. Any other preferences I should know?" Clara asked, aiming for casual and missing by an inch. Agnes shot her a knowing look. "He is a good man. Mrs. Carter keeps his own counsel, works hard, treats his people fair. Whatever arrangement the 2 of you struck, give him a chance before you decide what sort he is." The back door opened. Jameson stepped in with the cool air, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the day's labor already on his skin. "Mornin'," he said, nodding to them both. His eyes paused on Clara. "Sleep well." "Well enough," she answered. Agnes pressed a tin mug of coffee into his hand and shooed him toward the door. "Go on with you. Your breakfast will be ready when it is ready." When he was gone, Clara spoke the question that had worked at her since the ride home. "Agnes, what do folks say about Mr. Carter's reputation?" The old woman's hands stilled on the dough. "People talk," she said, "especially about a man who came back from war with quiet in his bones, who turned aside every eligible girl in the county." "Is any of it true?" Clara asked. "Some of it, maybe, though not in the way they say," Agnes replied, working the dough again. "Jameson Carter fought for the Union, came home to find his father failing and the ranch in debt. He has worked every day since to keep this place standing and to make something his father would be proud of. If that makes him seem hard, well, life out here is hard." The ranch hands came in for breakfast soon after dawn. their boots heavy on the plank floor, their voices low with morning weariness. They gave Clara curious glances, but kept a respectful distance, as though sensing her unease. Elias Boone, the foreman from the night before, gave her a gruff nod when he passed through the line. "Mrs. Carter," he said simply, before jerking his thumb toward the hallway. "Boss wants to see you in his study when you're done here." Clara smoothed her skirt, nodded, and later found Jameson in a narrow room off the main parlor. He was bent over a ledger, spectacles balanced on his nose, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to discuss terms," he said without looking up, then motioned for her to sit. Clara sat stiffly across from him. "Terms. As my wife, there are certain considerations," Jameson explained. "A monthly allowance for personal items, access to the ranch accounts for household expenses. Your own horse, if you can ride." "I can learn," Clara replied. Then, after a pause, she added, "I was good with my father's accounts. I could help you with these." He finally looked at her, something sharp flickering in his blue eyes. "What did your father do?" "He was a merchant. Import and export, mostly." She didn't add that his ventures had collapsed, dragging her security with them. Jameson considered her words, then slid the ledger across the desk. "Show me." Clara bent over the neat rows of numbers. "Your cattle operation is profitable," she said after a moment, "but you're overspending on grain, and these figures for bunkhouse supplies too high." Jameson's eyebrows lifted. "Go on." For the next hour, they studied the accounts together. Clara pointed out wasteful spending, while Jameson explained the challenges of running a ranch in such unforgiving country. He drew out a rough map, his finger tracing the course of a creek. "Water's always the fight," he said. "High Meadow has the best access. That's why it matters." "The homestead?" Clara asked. He nodded. "Government says I must build a dwelling and live there with my family for 5 years to secure the claim. We'll ride out tomorrow so you can see it." Clara found herself easing. Just a little. Whatever Jameson Carter was, he was clever and capable. "You surprise me, Mrs. Carter," he admitted, closing the ledger. "Most women don't bother with accounts. Most women don't marry strangers to survive," Clara answered dryly. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Fair point." He pushed back his chair. "I need to check the new calves. Want to come." The invitation caught her off guard. Still, she agreed. Outside, Jameson brought over a gentle mare. "She's yours," he said, adjusting the stirrups. "Her name's Daisy. Every rancher's wife needs a horse." The gift left Clara startled, almost shy. "Thank you." They rode side by side through grasslands dotted with cattle. Jameson pointed out landmarks, explaining how the ranch worked. Despite her limited experience, Clara found the wide sky and endless prairie strangely exhilarating compared to Boston's crowded streets. "That ridge marks High Meadow," Jameson said, pointing. "Homestead's 2 miles beyond." "It's beautiful," Clara breathed. "It's more than that," he answered quietly. "It was my father's dream. He died trying to achieve it. Tell me about him," she asked. Jameson was silent before answering. "He came west in '49, not for gold, for land. Met my mother in San Francisco. Brought her here. Worked himself into the ground trying to make this ranch succeed. The claim was his fight. He tried 3 times, paperwork lost, surveyors bribed, deadlines missed. Last time, he built a cabin. We lived there 2 years before a fire destroyed it all. He never recovered. And now you're determined to finish what he started." Clara said softly, "I owe him that much." As dusk painted the land in red and gold, Clara began to glimpse the man behind the stern exterior. He wasn't just stubborn, he was carrying a legacy. "So this marriage," Jameson said at last, "is practical. Government favors families. With you at my side, the claim is stronger, and if we hadn't married yesterday, I'd have lost the land by sundown." His jaw hardened. Harlan Bates has been circling like a vulture. He's a cattle baron from Texas, already owns half the county, wants the water rights too. Clara shivered. "And you're standing in his way." That evening, sore from hours in the saddle but unexpectedly light of spirit, Clara sat with Jameson over a simple meal. Later, he returned from his study carrying a small wooden box. "This was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a gold band with a modest sapphire. "If you're to be my wife even on paper, you should have a proper ring." Clara stared. "I couldn't possibly." "Please," he said quietly, "it will look right. Understanding." Clara extended her hand. The ring slid onto her finger as though it belonged there. "Thank you," she whispered, unexpectedly touched. Jameson nodded once. "Good night, Mrs. Carter." The next day, they rode out to High Meadow. The trail wound through pastures and rocky ridges until they crested a hill. Below them stretched a wide plain, the creek a silver ribbon snaking through cottonwoods. "There," Jameson said, pointing to a clearing where a rough cabin frame stood. "Our home for the next 5 years, at least on paper." "You've already begun," Clara noted. "Been at it for months. Should be finished before winter." He helped her down. Together they walked the skeleton of the cabin, 2 rooms, a stone hearth, a porch that would face the water. "It's smaller than the main house," he admitted, almost apologetic. "It's lovely," she answered honestly. They picnicked by the creek, bread and cheese Agnes had packed. Jameson's voice softened as he pointed out boundaries, grazing lands, hidden pools in the creek. His love for the land was as natural as breathing. "You really do love this place," Clara said. "It's in my blood," he replied simply. "What about you? What did you love in Boston?" The question startled her. "Books, my father's library, music. I played the piano. There's a piano in the main house, my mother's. No one's touched it in years." Her eyes lit, truly. He nodded. "I'll show you when we're back." Then, quieter. "Why did you leave Boston?" "Clara, what brought you all the way out here?" Her gaze dropped. "My father died in debt. Creditors took everything. No family, no prospects. I saw an advertisement for opportunities in the West. It seemed my only chance." Jameson was silent for a moment. "I'm sorry. Thank you," she whispered. "I know our marriage is an arrangement," she added after a beat, "but I mean to earn my keep." Jameson studied her carefully. "Never doubted it. You're not one to take the easy path. If you were, you'd have married one of those Boston gentlemen long before your father's business failed." Clara stiffened, his words pricking at old wounds. "How did you know my father's business failed?" Clara asked softly, her voice taut with unease. Jameson's eyes softened a fraction, the hard lines around his mouth easing. "The way you speak of it, the fact that you're here instead of back east. I don't judge you for it. Clara, we all do what we must to survive." On the ride back to Iron Creek Ranch, he took her along a different trail. They climbed into the foothills where the air grew sharper and the horses' breaths came in frosty puffs. At last, they reached a rise that opened into a view so vast Clara felt her chest tighten. The whole valley lay stretched beneath them, the ranch buildings small and far away, the sun sinking low, turning the land into a sea of gold and copper. "It's magnificent," Clara whispered. Jameson's gaze lingered on the horizon. "This is what I'm fighting for. Not just land, but a legacy, something that will outlast me." For the first time, Clara saw him not as the stern man who had struck a desperate bargain, but as a son carrying his father's unfulfilled dream. Something inside her shifted, small but undeniable. They rode home in silence, a comfortable quiet that wrapped around them like the dusk. That evening, true to his word, Jameson led her to the parlor. In the corner stood a rosewood piano, dust dulling its once polished surface. "It hasn't been tuned in years," he said, almost apologetically. Clara brushed her fingers over the yellowed keys and pressed one. The note rang out, still warm, still rich. Without thinking, her hands found a simple melody, her fingers stumbling at first, then steadying. When she stopped, Jameson was watching her, his expression unreadable but intent. "You play beautifully," he said quietly. "I'm rusty," she murmured, heat rising to her cheeks. "But thank you for letting me use it. It's yours now," he replied. "Everything here is yours as my wife." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither dared press further. Jameson cleared his throat. "I'll have someone come to tune it. Good night, Clara." In the days that followed, Clara settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She learned the kitchen under Agnes Turner's steady instruction, rode with Jameson until her seat grew surer in the saddle, and even began handling the account books. She took unexpected pride in balancing columns of figures, finding order where there had been waste. Jameson remained courteous but distant, as though some part of him stayed locked away. He never presumed on their marriage, never crowded her. Yet Clara found herself studying him when he wasn't aware the way his broad hands moved with certainty, whether breaking a horse or mending a fence, the rare smile that lit his face, the quiet command he carried without ever raising his voice. On weekends, they rode to High Meadow, working side by side to finish the cabin. Jameson taught her to fit floorboards, to drive nails, to hew logs smooth. Her palms blistered, her skirts gathered dust, and yet she laughed with satisfaction when he said one afternoon, "You're a natural, Clara, not afraid to get your hands dirty. Boston society would faint at the sight of me now," she teased, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of a dusty hand. "Do you miss it, society? Jameson asked. Clara thought carefully. "I miss the books, the music, conversations about art, politics, but I don't miss the pretense that money matters more than decency, that appearances mean everything. Out here, folks are judged by what they do, not by the weight of their purse or the name they carry." Jameson studied her. "Some would say you married me for what you stood to gain the land, the claim, and I married you for security," she returned evenly. "We both had reasons." His lips curved slightly. "Fair enough, but I'd say we've been fortunate in our bargain." It was the nearest either had come to admitting something deeper might be stirring. Or the following week, Clara went to town with Elias Boone to buy supplies. Jameson stayed behind, tending to a sick calf, inside the general store. Clara was examining bolts of fabric when a tall man in a fine coat approached. His dark hair was streaked with silver, his hat held politely in his hand, but his smile carried a razor's edge. "You must be Carter's new wife," he said smoothly. "Harlan Bates." "A pleasure, madam." Clara returned his look with cool courtesy. "Mr. Bates, I've heard your name. All good things. I trust his smile did not reach his eyes, though I doubt they came from your husband's lips. Jameson speaks of you exactly as much as you deserve," Clara said, turning her attention back to the fabric. Bates chuckled. "A loyal wife? How charming. But tell me, do you truly know what you've married into Jameson Carter is not the simple rancher he pretends to be?" "I know my husband well enough," Clara answered steadily. Bates leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Do you know about the fire? The one that destroyed your father-in-law's claim on High Meadow, curious timing? Don't you think right before the final inspection? Tragic accidents have a way of repeating themselves." Clara's hand froze on the fabric. "What exactly are you implying?" "Nothing, madam. Only that you should consider the dangers of staking your future on such uncertain ground. My offer to purchase Iron Creek Ranch still stands. You and your husband could live comfortably anywhere you wish." Before Clara could reply, Elias Boone stepped to her side, his jaw set like stone. "Everything all right here, Mrs. Carter, quite," Clara said calmly, her eyes still on Bates. "Mr. Bates was just leaving." Bates tipped his hat. "Indeed I was. Do give my regards to your husband when he was gone." Elias muttered darkly, "That man's a snake. Been trying to push Jameson out for years." "He mentioned the fire," Clara said, her voice low, "the one that ruined Jameson's father's claim." Elias's face hardened. "That's a sore subject, ma'am. Best you ask Jameson about it yourself." The ride home was taut with silence. Clara's thoughts churned like storm clouds. That evening, after supper, she found Jameson in his study, a lamp throwing sharp light across his face as he bent over papers. "I met Harlan Bates today," she said without preamble. Jameson's head lifted, his expression instantly alert. "What did he say that you might have had something to do with the fire that destroyed your father's homestead cabin?" Jameson went still, every muscle taut. "And what did you tell him?" he asked quietly. "Nothing," Clara replied. "But I am asking you now." She met his gaze without flinching. "Was there more to that fire than you've told me?" Clara's voice was steady, but her heartbeat quickened as she faced Jameson across his study desk. For a long moment, he only regarded her, his dark eyes unreadable. Then he exhaled, a sound heavy with years of silence, and motioned toward the chair opposite. "I was 15 when it happened," he began as Clara sat down. His gaze dropped to his calloused hands. "My father had just secured the paperwork for the High Meadow claim. We had been living in the homestead cabin nearly 2 years, my parents, my sisters, and me. Life wasn't easy, but we were making it work." He paused, his jaw tightening. "The fire broke out in the middle of the night. I woke to my mother screaming. The flames spread so fast we barely escaped alive." Clara's throat tightened. "That's terrible." Jameson's eyes darkened. "Bates suggests I had something to do with it because his family wanted that land, too. His father tried to buy it more than once, but mine refused. After the fire, without proof of residence, we lost the claim. Old man Bates rushed in to file on it himself. He died before the process was complete, but his son has been trying to finish the job ever since. You think they set the fire? Clara asked. I know they did. His voice was like iron. We found a broken lantern that wasn't ours. Footprints leading away into the brush. But there was no way to prove it in court. My father, he never recovered from losing that land. It broke him. Clara reached across the desk, her hand resting gently over his. I'm sorry. Jameson. His eyes flickered with surprise at her touch. Bates believes I'm out for revenge, that everything I've done is about settling an old score. He shook his head firmly. It's not. It's about justice, about finishing what my father started. Clara met his gaze with quiet conviction. I believe you. For a moment, the air between them was charged with something unspoken. His expression softened, the hardness around his eyes easing. Thank you for not assuming the worst. The silence lingered, filled with words neither dared to speak. At last, Jameson gently drew his hand back. It's late. You should get some rest. That night, Clara lay awake in her bed, turning over his story in her mind. She had come west seeking survival, bound by an arrangement neither had wanted. Yet she was beginning to see Jameson not only as her partner in necessity, but as a man carrying grief and determination in equal measure. And, if she was honest, she was beginning to care for him in a way she hadn't expected. The following Saturday, they rode out to the cabin at High Meadow. Jameson had been quieter since their talk about Bates, but not cold. If anything, he seemed more considerate, asking her opinions on the ranch accounts, making sure she was comfortable, teaching her more about the work. The cabin itself was nearly finished now. A sturdy roof stood against the sky, walls strong, windows fitted with glass hauled from town. That day they worked together to set a heavy cast-iron stove in its place. Clara pressed her back against the iron to help guide it, sweat dampening her brow despite the cool air. It's really starting to feel like a home, she said once it was settled. That's the idea, Jameson replied, wiping his hands on a rag. The inspector comes in 2 weeks. Everything must look well established by then, and if you pass, we keep residence for 5 years. Make improvements, then the claim is ours, secure. 5 years, Clara repeated softly. It sounded like forever, and yet somehow not long enough. Jameson studied her carefully. I know this isn't the life you pictured for yourself. No, she admitted, a small smile touching her lips. But nothing in my life has gone as planned lately. Do you regret it coming west? Our arrangement? Clara thought long and hard. At last she said, No, I don't regret it. Something flickered in his eyes, but before the moment could stretch further, the sound of hoofbeats reached them. Jameson stilled, hand going to the revolver at his hip. We're not expecting anyone, he said quietly. Stay inside. But Clara followed him to the window. 3 riders approached, dust curling behind their horses. At the front was Harlan Bates, astride a sleek black stallion, flanked by 2 hard-looking men Clara didn't recognize. Jameson stepped onto the porch, placing himself squarely in front of her. That's far enough. Bates reined in, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. Carter. Mrs. Carter. What the cozy little nest you've built. His gaze slid over the cabin, calculating. State your business, Jameson said flatly. Just neighborly concern. Bates replied with a thin smile. Inspector comes soon. Doesn't he? I wondered how far along you were. What's it to you professional interest? This parcel would round out my holdings nicely. I'm still prepared to make you a generous offer for Iron Creek Ranch, enough for you and your wife to start fresh anywhere else. Not interested, Jameson said. Never will be. Bates's smile thinned to nothing. History has a way of repeating itself. As I told your wife, isolated cabins, sudden fires, tragic accidents. Jameson's hand tightened on his revolver. Is that a threat? Only an observation? Bates's cold eyes turned to Clara. Mrs. Carter, I do hope you understand your husband's obsession has already cost his family dearly. It would be a pity if history repeated itself. Clara stepped forward, her heart hammering. Mr. Bates, you'll find the Carters are not so easily frightened. Not 20 years ago, and not now. For a heartbeat, surprise flickered across Bates's face before it hardened again. As you wish, madam, but remember my words when the time comes. He tipped his hat and turned his horse. His men followed, the three of them fading into the dust. Jameson turned to her sharply. You shouldn't have confronted him. I wasn't about to stand by while he threatened us, she answered. Her voice firm, though her pulse still raced. His expression wavered between admiration and concern. Bates is dangerous, Clara. He doesn't make idle threats. Neither do I, she said steadily. This is our land, Jameson, our home. I won't be chased away. The words hung between them, weighted with more than she intended. Jameson's gaze searched hers, something new and uncertain stirring there. You mean that about this being our home? Clara hesitated, then nodded. I think I do. It's become more than an arrangement to me. Jameson stepped closer. So near Clara could feel the warmth radiating from him. His voice was low, rough with something unspoken. Clara. The rest was cut short by the crack of a rifle echoing through the night. Jameson reacted instantly, yanking her back from the open doorway and pressing her against the cabin wall. Stay low, he ordered, revolver already in his hand. What is it? She whispered, crouched beside him, her pulse pounding. Could be nothing. Could be Bates's men trying to rattle us. He slid toward the window, careful to stay below the sill. I'll check it out, he said. You keep out of sight. No, Clara protested, surprising even herself with her determination. We stay together. Another gunshot cracked, this one closer. Jameson's jaw tightened. Fine, but you do exactly as I say. They slipped out the back door into the cover of the cottonwoods lining the creek. Jameson moved with quiet certainty, one hand at her elbow guiding her through the shadows. His calm steadiness steadied her, too, even as fear pricked along her spine. Not far from the cabin, angry voices carried through the night. Told you not to shoot at them, one man snapped. Was just firing in the air. Boss. Another mumbled. Meant to scare 'em, not hit 'em. Idiots, a cold voice cut in. I don't want them dead. Not yet. I want them gone. Clara froze. That voice was unmistakable Harlan Bates. Jameson's grip tightened on her arm. It's him, he whispered. What do we do? His face was grim. We listen. Bates has finally slipped. They crept closer, using the trees for cover. In a small clearing, they saw Bates with two of his men, one of them cradling a rifle. No more shooting. Bates hissed, We do this my way, after dark. Make it look like an accident. What about the woman? One of the men asked. Leave her. Bates snapped. Just burn the cabin. That'll send the message. Jameson's face hardened, fury written plain. He shifted as though ready to charge. but Clara grabbed his sleeve. "No," she whispered urgently. "We can't take all three. We need proof, and we need the law. For a moment." He looked as though he might ignore her, but then he gave a curt nod. "You're right. We ride for town. Sheriff Harper will put an end to this." They circled back to the cabin, careful not to be seen. Their horses still stood tied near the shed, blessedly untouched. "We'll ride double on mine," Jameson said, hastily gathering their few belongings. "It's faster, and I don't want to split up." As they mounted, Clara's arms wound tightly around his waist. The feel of his solid frame beneath her hands filled her with both reassurance and fear. At some point in these past weeks, this man had ceased being just a partner in a bargain. He had become something far more vital. They rode hard for Copper Creek, taking back trails through the hills to avoid crossing paths with Bates. Every rustle in the brush, every cracking twig made Clara's heart leap. At last, the glow of lanterns along the main street came into view. Relief nearly undid her. They dismounted in front of the sheriff's office. Inside, Sheriff Tom Harper looked up from his desk, his weathered face calm but alert. When Jameson finished recounting what they had overheard, the sheriff leaned back in his chair with a grunt. "I knew Bates was trouble. Been pushing the line of the law for years. Looks like tonight he finally crossed it." "Will you help us?" Jameson asked. "We need witnesses if they move on the cabin." "You'll have them," the sheriff said firmly. "I'll gather a few men I trust. We'll be waiting when Bates makes his play." "I'm coming," Jameson said. "Me too," Clara added without hesitation. Both men turned to her in surprise. "It's our home," she said simply. "Our fight." Jameson's expression softened. "Clara, don't tell me it's too dangerous." She cut him off. "I've faced Harlan Bates and heard his threats with my own ears. I have a right to see justice served." After a long moment, Jameson nodded. "Then you stay with me every step of the way." Within the hour, the sheriff had gathered 4 reliable townsmen and deputized them. Together, the small posse rode back toward the Iron Creek Ranch. By the time they reached the homestead, dusk had settled. The cabin stood quiet against the deepening sky. "No sign yet," Sheriff Harper murmured. "Good. Gives us time to set the trap." The men tethered their horses in a grove and spread out, the sheriff assigning posts around the clearing. Jameson and Clara were told to stay inside the cabin. "If they come to torch it, they'll have to get close," Harper explained. "We'll take them red-handed." As the last light faded, Clara and Jameson sat side by side on the cabin floor, backs pressed to the wall. "I'm sorry," Jameson said quietly, "for dragging you into this mess." "You didn't drag me anywhere," Clara answered. "I chose this when I agreed to marry you. It was supposed to be a business deal, nothing more. But life has a way of tearing up our plans." Jameson's hand found hers in the dark. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Clara said softly. "Despite his mistakes." They sat in silence, the danger outside making the closeness between them strangely intimate. "Clara," Jameson whispered, "if we get through this, if we hold this land, you'll be free to go, if that's what you want. I'll see you're taken care of." She turned to him, startled. "Is that what you want? For me to leave in the dim light?" She saw him shake his head. "No, it's not what I want at all." Before she could respond, a sharp whistle cut the night the sheriff's signal. Jameson moved to the window. 3 shadowy figures crept from the creek, the tall silhouette of Harlan Bates unmistakable. "They're here," Jameson whispered. Bates's men carried a lantern and a can of kerosene. Remember, Bates' voice carried, "No light inside. Looks like they left. Easy job. Just make it look like an accident. If they come back, deal with them. Permanently." A chill ran down Clara's spine. Then the sheriff's voice rang out, hard and clear. "That's far enough. Bates, you're under arrest." Gunfire erupted. Bullets splintered the cabin walls as Bates's men fired wildly into the dark. Jameson pulled Clara to the floor, shielding her with his body. The fight was sharp but brief. When it ended, one man was down, another had fled into the trees, and Bates himself stood at gunpoint, the sheriff's deputies closing in. "It's over. Bates," Sheriff Harper declared. "Attempted arson. Attempted murder. You'll hang for this." Bates's cold eyes locked on Jameson. "This isn't over, Carter. Not by a long shot." "Yes, it is," Jameson said steadily. "Your father tried to steal this land 20 years ago. You tried tonight. Both of you failed." As the sheriff led Bates away, Clara trembled with delayed shock. Jameson wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You all right?" he asked gently. She nodded, leaning into him, just sorting it all out. They stood together beneath the moonlight, the cabin scarred but still standing. "What you said earlier," Clara began hesitantly, "about me being free to go." "Yes." She lifted her gaze to his. "I don't want to leave, Jameson. Not anymore." His eyes searched hers, hope and uncertainty mingling. "Why?" "Because this isn't just an arrangement anymore. Somewhere along the way, I began to care for you." Jameson's roughened hand cupped her cheek, his touch achingly tender. "I never expected you," he said, voice raw. "Never expected to find someone who would stand beside me, fight for this land as if it were her own." "It is mine," Clara whispered. "You made it mine when you married me." "I married you for convenience," he admitted softly. "But now I want more than that." Her heart pounded. "What do you want?" "Jameson." "A real marriage," he said simply. "With you, if you'll have me." Instead of answering with words, Clara rose on her toes and pressed her lips softly against James's. The kiss began hesitant, uncertain, but quickly deepened. James's arms came around her, strong and sure, pulling her close as if he'd never let her go. When they finally drew apart, breathless and a little dazed, he rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" he murmured, his voice carrying both hope and a rare tenderness. "Yes," Clara whispered, her heart racing. "That's a yes." 2 weeks later, the government inspector arrived at the homestead cabin in northern Arizona. The small house had been patched up after the gunfire, bullet holes plastered over, and fresh lumber added where needed. Clara had sewn curtains for the windows, bringing a touch of home, and planted a modest garden near the porch. What once looked like a rough cabin now felt like the beginnings of a true home. The inspector, a stiff man with a clipboard and an expression that gave little away, walked the property with James. "Living here full time. Are you?" the inspector asked, his eyes scanning every detail. "As much as the ranch allows," James answered truthfully. "My wife and I divide our time between here and the main ranch house, but this cabin is our residence." The inspector nodded, jotting notes. Clara stood nearby, nerves fluttering in her stomach as James guided the man to the fencing they had begun. The small clearings prepared for crops, and even sketches of their plans for expansion. Family in mind, the inspector asked, raising an eyebrow when he saw the drawings that hinted at more rooms. "Yes," Clara replied, cheeks warming as her eyes met James's. "We're planning for children." James's hand brushed hers, the touch saying more than words. In truth, neither of them had spoken of it in detail, but in these past weeks their marriage had transformed. What began as a bargain had grown into something steady and real. The future no longer felt uncertain. It had begun to take shape with every shared look and every word left unspoken. "Well," the inspector said finally, closing his clipboard, "everything appears in order. I'll recommend approval of your claim. As long as you maintain residence and continue making improvements, in 5 years this land will be yours officially." Relief swept through Clara. James squeezed her hand firmly, his jaw set with determination. "We will," he promised. That evening, as they saddled their horses to ride back toward the main ranch, Clara paused on the porch, her gaze sweeping over the cabin, the garden, and the still raw land around it. "What's on your mind?" James asked, stepping beside her. "That I never expected to find a home here," she admitted. "When I left Philadelphia, I thought I was leaving everything behind. I didn't imagine I might find something better." James's arms slipped around her waist, his chest warm against her back. "Is it better? This hard land, this wild country with you?" "It is," she answered simply. "We make it better together." He turned her in his arms, his blue eyes burning with an honesty that stole her breath. "I love you, Clara Blackwood. Not for the convenience, not for the claim, but for you, for your courage, for your strength, for the way you saw something worth fighting for in me when no one else did." Tears stung her eyes as she whispered back, "I love you too. My cowboy who once told me he'd give me work only if I married him before sunset." James laughed then, the sound lighter than she'd ever heard from him. "Best bargain I ever struck." And before the golden Arizona sun slipped away, he kissed her once more, sealing a vow that had grown beyond land or circumstance. 5 years later. James stood on the porch of that same cabin, now weathered but proud, the official deed tucked safely in his pocket from the county office. Their 3-year-old son, Daniel, chased butterflies through the garden that Clara had turned into a riot of colors and fragrance. In her arms, she held their infant daughter, Ruth. Her tiny hand curled against Clara's dress. Thinking deep thoughts, she asked, stepping beside her husband. "Thinking about how much has changed," he said, slipping his arm around her shoulders. 5 years ago, you rode into my life asking for a job, and I made the most outrageous proposal I could think of, and I said yes." Clara teased, smiling. "What does that say about me that you were either very brave or very foolish?" He answered with a grin, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Or maybe just desperate enough to take a chance on a stubborn stranger. The best chance I ever took," Clara said softly, glancing toward the homestead, the garden, and their children. "Look what it gave us." The Broken Spur Ranch had flourished as well, thanks to Clara's business sense alongside James's knowledge of the land. Debts were paid off, their herds had grown, and the Blackwoods had earned a reputation for honesty and fairness. As for Harlan Bates, his threats were only memories now. He was serving time in prison, no longer a shadow hanging over their future. "How should we celebrate today?" James asked as Daniel held out his hand, laughing when a butterfly perched briefly before fluttering away. "I was thinking," Clara said, a playful smile tugging her lips, that we should have a real wedding, not just words muttered in front of a courthouse judge, something more, something that honors not how we began, but how we stayed. James turned, studying the woman who had changed his life. Her honey-brown hair gleamed in the sunlight, her hazel eyes carrying both wisdom and warmth. "I think that's a fine idea," he said at last. "Though I'll warn you, I plan to say the same words I did 5 years ago." "You mean you'll propose marriage only if I'll have you before sunset?" Clara teased, laughter in her voice. "No," James said, his tone soft, tender. "This time, I'll promise to love you all my days, to build a life worthy of your courage, to never forget what you gave me the day you said yes." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Those weren't the words you spoke then. They were the words in my heart, even if I didn't know them yet," he replied. Their little boy ran up the porch steps, bursting with excitement. "Papa, I saw the biggest butterfly, blue as the sky." James scooped him up with ease, settling him on his hip. "As big as me," Daniel giggled. "Not that big." Clara watched them, her heart overflowing. She remembered the desperate woman she once was, arriving in Arizona with nothing but hope and grit. Now she stood as a wife, a mother, and a partner in a life richer than she'd ever dreamed. "Now, what are you thinking?" James asked, his eyes catching hers over their son's head. "That sometimes the wildest bargains lead to the most beautiful lives," she said, "and that I'd say yes again, no matter how hard the road." "So would I," James murmured, "every single time." As the sun slid toward the horizon, painting the Arizona sky in molten gold, the Blackwood family stood together on the porch of their home. A home not just built of wood and nails, but of trust, courage, and a love that began as a bargain and grew into a legacy. Life rarely unfolds the way we expect. Clara and James began with nothing more than a desperate bargain, a marriage born of necessity rather than romance. Yet, through hardship, danger, and sacrifice, their bond grew into something far greater than either could have imagined. Their story reminds us that sometimes the choices we make in our hardest hours become the very foundation of our greatest blessings. For those of us who have lived long enough to know loss, struggle, and uncertainty, this tale carries a timeless truth. Love and resilience can grow in the most unlikely places. A broken rancher and a penniless woman built not just a home, but a legacy because they chose to trust, to endure, and to build together. It is never too late, no matter our age, to discover that new beginnings can rise from broken roads. The past may shape us, but it does not chain us. Like Clara and James, we, too, can find strength in adversity and hope in unexpected places. Their lesson is clear when life asks us to take a chance. Courage and faith can turn the risk into a blessing that endures. Thank you, dear friends, for sharing your time with us today. Stories like this live on because of you, your hearts, your memories, and your belief in love that lasts. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us continue bringing you tales that stir the soul and remind us of the power of love across the ages. Until next time, may your days be filled with hope, peace, and the kind of love that only grows stronger with time.